Hello and welcome to Skinbag of Coffee. I am your host, Philtron, broadcasting from a pre-recorded video here in Roswell, New Mexico. Alien City, baby. I found this guy, he came up on my suggestions. His name's Jacob Whalen. I like his style, I like his tone, and this video is about basically enshitification and regression. He's basically talking about the premise of what the movie Idiocracy is about. So check this out.
Referring to this as the stalled century. But if you look at the deeper meaning behind why people are saying this, it actually paints a very bleak picture, and I think it uncovers a fundamental flaw in society, because I don't think we're actually living in a stalled century. I think it goes much deeper than that. What I think we're experiencing is a century that is regressing. And if you really want to illustrate this point, all you have to do is look back at the early 1900s, where everything that surrounds us today in modern society was birthed. I mean, back in those days, that's where everything started. The automobile, the modern building, modern structures, skyscrapers, radio, antennas, TV, and eventually the internet. All of this stuff that surrounds us today was either born or was conceptualized back then. And that is what's led us to this point. But if you think about all the stuff that was in fact born during that time period, and you look at what surrounds us today, it hasn't really changed much. And that's a big reason why people say that we're in the stalled century, because everything is pretty much the same. And I would say that's true to a point, but again, I think it goes much deeper than that, because when you look at the stuff that surrounds us today versus back then, things have in fact changed a lot. But they haven't changed for the better, which is why I believe that we're actually in a century of regression. And let's just start from the automobile, all right? So we went from horse and buggy and walking to the modern automobile, what we have today. And if you think about back then, the automobile was basically four wheels and an engine and a cab. What is the automobile today? It's the exact same thing. The only difference today is that there's a lot of technology in there. But do we really need that technology? Does that stuff actually benefit our lives? It's supposed to add comfort and convenience and efficiencies. Does it really do that? Considering back in the 1970s, we had automobiles that got 30 miles to the gallon. And as a matter of fact, there were automobiles that got even better gas mileage than that, but the people that invented these things, they disappeared. That stuff never saw the light of day. So could it be that we're kind of being suppressed when it comes to coming up with ideas and inventions that benefit humanity as a whole? I guess that's to be determined, but when you look at other things like
All right, so the automotive industry, he's right about this. I've seen this firsthand. This is another reason people hate capitalism. So auto manufacturers realize that maximizing profit doesn't necessarily correlate to the quality of the product, rather the degree to which you can keep the buyer coming back to the service department. Like, they know the life of a part because of fatigue analysis. I think this is called enshitification. What is enshitification? Once a platform becomes successful and dominant, it starts to make itself worse for its users in order to extract more profit, control, and data from them. The auto industry has a very long arc of enshitification, and they'll eventually move to a subscription service. It'll be much cheaper, but no one will own a car.
the modern structure, let's talk about houses and skyscrapers and things like that. Houses are basically the same. I mean, back in the day, it was log cabins, and before that, it was stone buildings, stone structures. And when you think about those things, I mean, heck, here in Kentucky, there's still a lot of log cabins from the 1800s standing. And there are a lot of stone and steel bridges that are still standing all over the country that were built in the 17 and 1800s. And when you look back even further than that, there are buildings, stone structures, that have been standing for thousands of years. And then when you fast forward to the modern structure, the buildings and the houses that we have today, they wouldn't last 100 years if you did everything right and you took care of them to the best of your abilities. They wouldn't last. because they're not built the same. We have all these stick-built houses now, and they're made up of plastic and these man-made materials for the most part. And the wood back then is much different than the wood today. I mean, wood planks back then, they were hand-hewn. They were made from oak and hickory and very hard woods. But today, it's cheap pine. I remember having treated fence posts back in the 80s and 90s that we would put in at the farm. And they would last for 20, 30 years. I mean, that stuff's still out there today. The stuff that we put in back then. And these days, you get treated lumber and you put it in the ground for a deck or something like that. And within 10 years, it's rotted out. The stuff just is not made to last. And
right, and you can observe this in real time, the increase of cost of materials. A can of paint 8 years ago was like $15, and now it's $40. There's countless examples, and like the can of paint, now it's in a plastic can instead of a tin can because it's cheaper. The quality goes down while the price goes up.
that is true for almost all materials. Even when it comes to the most important parts of these buildings and structures, things like the foundation, they're not built the way they used to be built. Back in the day, foundations were made from stone. They were made to last. A lot of the foundations on the old houses are still standing today. But on this new stuff, it's made from cheap concrete. There's cracks in the walls. People pour basements and the basement leaks because the walls crack. And then you'll have a part of the house sinking in, and it's just not built the same. And when it comes to the automobile, going back to that, I think that's especially true because, yes, automobiles have all this technology in there. They haven't really advanced beyond that, and automobiles now are made to fail. It's the same way houses are. I mean, automobiles back in the day, you would get one and you could drive it for 40, 50 years. Some of these things would last 400,000 miles, some beyond that. I still have my original truck. It's a 1984 S10. It's 40 years old and it's still going. All my vehicles are older and they're all still on the road. This newer stuff, you buy it within 10 to 50,000 miles, it's in the shop for something catastrophic. And when you have all of this technology integrated in there, yeah, maybe it adds some convenience, maybe it tacks on a few extra horsepower and some extra gas mileage, but it's all integrated into the engine. So if one thing goes wrong in the millions of moving parts and in all the software, it bricks the entire vehicle. It stops working. And then you're on the hook for expensive repairs. But it's not even about the cost. It's just about the fact that these things aren't built the way they were built back in the day. All this technology and all this modern stuff that we're putting in there, it's not really an advancement. Even when it comes to things like airplanes. I mean, the airplane's been around, 100 plus years? And has it really changed that much? I mean, think about the technology we had back in the 60s and 70s. We had the SR-71 Blackbird, the baddest plane of all time. That technology is basically non-existent now. At the very least, if we had that technology back in those days, you would think that today we would be 5 times more advanced, 10 times more advanced with all the other technology and stuff that we have in our lives. But that's not the case. And I mean, think about it this way. If you believe in this stuff, that technology back then took us to the moon, supposedly. But somehow today, we've supposedly lost that technology. How does that make sense? We went to the moon in the late 60s, but suddenly we can't get back there? Suddenly we no longer have that technology? That doesn't sound like a stalled century to me. That sounds like regression. And it seems like no matter what part of society and our modern culture that you point at, things have regressed. Quality across the board has gone downhill. That's true for everything from consumer electronics and appliances and basically just consumer goods in general, all the way down to food. And when you think about food in general, most of it now comes in a box or a package. It's prepackaged, hyper-processed junk food, basically. We went from growing and producing our own food and eating stuff that is grown from the earth to now eating stuff that is made in a laboratory. And most of the reason behind that is because of convenience and comfort.
This too, like the majority of products available at Sam's and Walmart are packaged foods that have 1,000-character long ingredients list, and regulations on this type of thing are extremely loose in the U.S. compared to other first world countries. And I'm not big on regulation, but just people are not knowing what they're eating. That's all what that boils down to. Like, they're not eating whole foods like rice and chicken or yogurt as much as, like, cookies and frozen things that you throw in the oven, or a frozen pizza, or just look at the ingredients on those things. Like, do you even recognize what any of those words are in the ingredients list? Only an understanding of nutrition and being vigilant about the products that we put into our bodies is going to fix the problem. The only reason I know this is because I read it in a book. Growing up, I ate Doritos and drank Dr. Pepper like all the other kids, and I watched lots of TV. I watched lots of commercials because you had to watch the commercials. I didn't read any books.
And efficiency. A lot of it comes down to money, but again, this isn't really about money. It's just about the fact that everything has changed, and it hasn't changed for the better. And when we're talking about things like consumer electronics and appliances and the stuff we use in our daily lives, that stuff has gone downhill too. My parents still have an old freezer that they had before I was born, and it is sitting in their shed, still plugged in, still running. No air conditioning, no heat, and that thing gets so cold that the outside of it ices over in the summertime when it's...
Right, yeah, you'll see this. A lot of old products will still work, like from the even the 70s, 80s, 90s. Those appliances are still working, but if you compare that to modern appliances, I've seen new washers fail in only a few years, while a washer and dryer from 20, 30 years ago is still kicking. Obviously there's a decline in quality. The cost of producing a quality product is substituted, it's basically offloaded from the companies onto the consumers by, instead of selling them a quality product, they sell them something that's readily replaced. So it's just a decrease in quality and an increase in frequency of buying the new product over just replacing it, like TVs and cell phones. It's all just a cycle. It's very short and repetitive, iterative, that maximizes profit, obviously.
Really humid. A big reason it does that is because the outside is rusted solid, but the thing is still running. But you can't go out and buy a modern appliance today and expect it to last 10 years. These things are designed to fail. And I think back on the old TVs we had when I was growing up, the old tube-style TVs that weighed like 500 pounds. Those things lasted forever. As a matter of fact, I just sold one of the TVs I had growing up last year, I think it was, and it still worked perfectly fine to this day. And not only did they work fine, but they were also extremely easy to work on. If something broke inside those TVs, anybody that was familiar with electronics and knows how to troubleshoot could go in there and repair these TVs because the components were easy to remove and replace. A lot of that stuff was kind of pop and swap. But today, TVs and modern electronics are basically throwaway. They're not made to last, and if these things fail, you have to buy a new one because almost nobody can repair these things. All the components are very, very tiny, and they're all surface mount, which means that you have to have specialized equipment in order to work on this stuff, and it's simply not made to be worked on. It's not made really for the consumer in mind.
Right,
so even though the
you
technology itself is technically more advanced, does this really sound more advanced to you? And it's one thing for all this stuff to have regressed, but when you really think about this, we've regressed as a whole. Society in general has kind of gone downhill. I mean, think about people. People have changed in drastic ways. It's almost hard to quantify, but I mean, just think about the last time you went out in public and compare that to 20, 30 years ago. The entire dynamic, especially socially, has completely changed, and not for the better. Because morals and values have kind of gone out the window. People don't really care about much these days. They don't care about their fellow man. We went from having these tightly knit communities and these groups to everybody just being kind of isolated and alone. Everybody feels very isolated and alone. Even though we live in these massive cities and these sprawling apartment complexes, nobody can relate with one another. Nobody connects the same way we used to. Social interaction is basically non-existent. The only way we communicate now is through the internet and social media. We don't go out.
Right, that's true. And a lot of that is because you have these, basically the entities that are trying to vie for your attention, and they're so competitive that your attention is so consumed by them that it competes even for your friends and family. So it's like your attention is so monopolized by these electronic devices that you choose to spend time on them in lieu of meaningful time with another actual human being.
Talk to strangers. We don't give people compliments. We don't say hi to one another. We're now divided and combative. Nobody can have an actual conversation anymore. It's all about who's right and who's wrong. It's all about this divisiveness and all of this polarization between pretty much everybody and everything in society. Trust has largely gone out the window. And when it comes to our mind and our IQ, this generation now, Generation Z, is the first generation in modern history that has a lower IQ than its predecessors. And that is terrifying. But you know, the crazy thing is that the main reason for this is because of these conveniences.
Right. And if you've worked in public schools recently, you've probably noticed a growing number of students who seem disengaged, unmotivated. I think many of them intuitively understand that AI can now do much of the work for them. So putting in serious effort feels pointless. Why grind through rigorous study if the tool can generate the answer for you in seconds?
It's because of these comforts and trying to implement all of these efficiencies and all this technology, all this stuff that's supposed to complement our lives, that's supposed to be advancing us, is somehow causing us to regress. Because they have now shown that all of this technology that is infiltrating classrooms is causing people's IQs to go down. And the scariest part about that is our future. That is where we're leading. Whenever we're all gone, we're going to hand this country and this world over to the newer generations. And these newer generations aren't going to have a clue. We're looking at a future of idiocracy. And I read something just the other day talking about how these kids were in the classroom, they were given a test, and of course they have their tablet and they have AI that they can use to, come up with the answers. And after the test, these kids were taken into a room.
Right, you basically have basically have just device farming. They literally have these big wheeled carts full of Chromebooks that they just distribute to the kids so they can just basically plug in and just the device babysits them. That's basically what happens.
And they were questioned about the test that they just took. And not only could these kids not remember the answers to the questions, they couldn't even remember the questions. And that is because the only thing they did to come up with the answers was take the question, plug it into a chat bot, and then copy that answer into the test.
Yeah.
That's how.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. That's basically it. Like, these kids are not dumb. The kids are not retarded. Like, they know how to hijack a Chromebook, and then they can do whatever they want. That's basically, the kids are smarter than the teachers in a lot of cases. And, it's not about the academic performance anymore. It's just simply about getting through the day.
They came up with the answer. There was no thought at all involved. And, these kids, they do this stuff so often that when they do that, they're basically running on autopilot. So not only is there no thought involved with coming up with the answer, there's no thought involved, period. Critical thinking is gone. Logic and simply using your brain is lost. So from the early 1900s and the Industrial Revolution to now, we have gone from being a productive...
I don't think it's so much that critical thinking is gone as necessarily as much as the... I don't know.
Innovative society that uses critical thought and logic to come up with all of these amazing innovations and all of the stuff that surrounds us today, to becoming a society of glorified data inputters who don't care about anything and who value nothing, not even human life. And that is becoming especially true when it comes to this new era of AI, because a lot of people are being pushed out of their jobs and are being forced into training AI to become the replacement. They're becoming glorified data inputters. That seems to be where society is headed. And in my humble opinion, that does not sound like a stall. That sounds like the ultimate version of regression. And the worst part about all this is that all these things that are leading to our regression are actually being sold to us in the name of advancement. I mean, think about vehicles. They have all this technology built in now, all these cameras and the biometrics and the kill switches, and they tell us it's for our own good. It's for our benefit. It's for the safety of the public. But is it really? All these new building materials they come up with, they tell us it's going to make the houses stronger, they're going to last longer, they're going to be cheaper to produce. But have we noticed the price of houses going down? Have we noticed stronger houses? Are they more likely to withstand a hurricane or a tornado or strong winds, or are they more likely to blow over like a straw house? All this food that's made in a laboratory, we're told that that's the future. This is where things are headed. It's going to make us healthier. Food's going to be cheaper. It's going to be better for the planet. Is that really the case, though? Maybe it's time that we start asking these questions. And maybe it's time that we start seeing these things for what they truly are. Because from where I'm sitting, these things appear to be a trap. And not a trap for another stalled century, but a trap for another century of regression. And as we start asking these questions and pulling the veil back from all this deception, I think it's also very important that we start thinking about ways that we can combat this. And I think that's where the silver lining comes in, because it seems that the way to combat this is actually very, very simple. I think all we have to do is just start encouraging critical thought and logic and innovation, and create the space for ourselves to come up with new ideas. And not just in the name of comfort and convenience. That can be a reason, but also for the betterment of society in general. And maybe creating the space for people to do that is as simple as disconnecting from all this fake stuff and reconnecting with the things that are real. Reconnecting with actual people in the real world. Community, tribe. This is where new ideas are born. So moving forward, it's going to be very important that we create that peace and that silence for ourselves so that we can use our mind. So that we can stop being the glorified data inputter and we can become the data. And we can use that data to improve our situation. Moving forward, it's going to be fundamentally important to become the change that we all want to see.
So, yeah, it's on the individual in the end to improve the quality of his or her life. Isn't it? You can encourage and foster critical thinking all you want, but the schools aren't going to do it. They're basically a glorified state-run daycare, you know. We can't outsource our teaching to these public schools anymore, especially when it comes to critical thinking. It's on the individual to take the responsibility of educating their children. That's why you see parents switching to homeschool en masse, because they recognize the failures of the public school system to fulfill its purpose beyond just being free daycare. You don't have to look far. Just find a problem, gain the skills necessary to solve the problem, and solve it. It's that simple. Teach your kids that. Anything else is fluff, waste of energy, if it's subtracting from what kids should be doing, which is playing. Anyway, I like this guy. His channel is Jacob Whalen, Whalen. He kind of sounds like Owen Wilson. I'm just a guy asking questions. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy with some questions, just making observations. I dig it. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Remember that you are loved, and I'll talk to you later.